The morning began like any other, but inside the company office, everyone could feel the pressure. Employees walked quickly through the hallways, checking files, answering phone calls, and preparing for an important meeting with a major client. Every desk was busy, and every minute seemed to matter. Among the employees was a young woman who had been working hard for weeks. She wanted everything to go perfectly because she hoped this project would help her earn a better position in the company. She had stayed late at the office for several nights, skipped lunch more than once, and barely had enough sleep. That morning, she already felt exhausted before the workday had truly started. Small problems kept making things worse. A printer stopped working just when important papers needed to be printed. A customer called with last-minute changes. A coworker accidentally misplaced some files, forcing everyone to search for them in a hurry. One problem after another pushed everyone's patience closer to the limit. She tried to stay calm, but every new delay made her more frustrated. She looked at the clock again and again. The client meeting was getting closer, and she felt as if everything around her was falling apart. At the same time, a man arrived at the company's entrance carrying a medium-sized package. His clothes were clean but simple. He wore comfortable shoes, plain pants, and an ordinary shirt without any expensive accessories. Nothing about his appearance attracted attention. To anyone passing by, he looked like a regular delivery worker bringing a package to the office. The receptionist was busy answering several phone calls at once and politely asked him to wait for a moment. He smiled, nodded, and quietly stood near the entrance without complaining. He looked around the office with interest as employees hurried from one department to another. A few workers walked past him without saying a word. Some barely noticed him. Others simply assumed he was waiting to deliver a package like many people did every day. A few minutes later, the young woman rushed into the hallway carrying several folders. Her mind was filled with deadlines, unfinished work, and the upcoming meeting. She barely looked where she was going before stopping suddenly when she noticed the man standing nearby. Without asking who he was, she assumed he was another delivery worker who had come at the worst possible time. She sighed loudly and said, "Can't you see everyone is busy? Please don't stand in the middle of the hallway." The man looked at her calmly. "I'm sorry if I'm in the way," he replied politely. "I can move." Instead of calming down, she became even more irritated. Stress had already taken control of her emotions. She believed people should follow instructions immediately, and she misunderstood his calm attitude as carelessness. "You should have waited somewhere else," she said with frustration. "People are trying to work here." Nearby employees quietly turned their heads toward the conversation. Some sensed the situation was becoming uncomfortable, but no one stepped in. The man simply nodded again. "I understand," he answered softly. For a brief second, it seemed the conversation was over. But as she tried to walk past him, one of the folders slipped from her hands. Papers scattered across the floor, sliding in different directions. The man immediately bent down to help collect them. Instead of seeing it as kindness, she misunderstood his action. Already overwhelmed by stress and embarrassment, she reacted without thinking. She quickly pushed his hand away and slapped him across the face. The sound echoed through the hallway. Everything became silent. Phones continued ringing in distant offices, but inside the hallway, nobody moved. Several employees stared in complete shock. The man slowly lifted his head. He did not raise his voice. He did not look angry. He simply took a slow breath. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to make your day harder." His calm response surprised everyone even more. The young woman still believed she had done nothing seriously wrong. In her mind, she thought she had only reacted after an already stressful morning. The man carefully picked up the last sheet of paper from the floor and handed the folders back to her. "Here you go," he said with a small, respectful smile. Without waiting for another word, he thanked the receptionist for her patience and walked toward the elevators. Several co-workers exchanged confused looks. One employee whispered, "Did anyone notice how confident he seemed?" Another quietly replied, "Yes, and he didn't even argue." Someone else looked toward the elevator and frowned. "I've never seen a delivery worker go to the executive floor before." Those words made a few people pause. The young woman heard the comment but ignored it. She assumed someone had simply given him permission to deliver the package upstairs. She took a deep breath, gathered her papers, and hurried toward the meeting room, trying to forget what had just happened. But the strange silence that followed the incident stayed in everyone's mind. No one could explain why the quiet man had remained so calm. No one understood why he seemed completely comfortable inside the building. And no one knew that within the next few minutes, the entire office was about to discover a truth that would leave every employee speechless. The meeting room slowly filled with employees. Some carried laptops, while others brought notebooks and printed reports. Quiet conversations filled the room as everyone waited for the special guest who was supposed to speak before the client meeting began. The young woman found a seat near the front. Although she tried to focus on the presentation, her mind kept returning to what had happened in the hallway. She remembered the quiet man, the scattered papers, and the way he had calmly apologized instead of becoming angry. For a moment, she wondered if she had been too harsh. Before she could think about it any longer, the room suddenly became silent. The director of the branch walked to the front with a smile. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "Before we begin today's meeting, we have an important surprise." Everyone looked toward the stage. As many of you know, our company founder likes to visit different offices without giving advance notice. He believes the best way to understand the workplace is to see it exactly as it is on a normal day. People immediately became curious. Some smiled, while others quietly looked around the room. The director continued. "Please give a warm welcome to the owner of our company." The doors at the side of the room opened. The same man from the hallway walked inside. He was still wearing the same simple clothes. He carried no expensive briefcase. There were no security guards surrounding him. His calm smile had not changed. For several seconds, nobody moved. The room became completely silent. The young woman's eyes grew wide. Her face lost its color as she realized who he really was. Her hands began to shake. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. The man she had mistaken for a delivery worker was standing at the front of the room as the owner of the entire company. Several employees quietly exchanged surprised looks. One whispered, "I knew something felt different." Another quietly replied, "He looked too calm for someone who was only making deliveries." The owner thanked everyone for the welcome and began speaking as if nothing unusual had happened. "It is always good to visit our teams in person," he said warmly. "Every office has its own strengths, its own challenges, and its own people who work hard every day." His voice was calm and friendly. He never mentioned the hallway. He never looked toward the young woman with anger. Instead, he spoke about teamwork, honesty, respect, and helping one another during difficult days. The young woman lowered her eyes. Every word seemed directed at her, even though the owner never pointed at anyone. She felt deeply uncomfortable. She wished she could go back a few minutes and change everything. As the meeting continued, the owner shared stories from the early days of the company. He explained that when he first started the business, he often delivered products himself because there were very few employees. He answered customer calls, packed boxes, cleaned the office, and even fixed broken furniture whenever necessary. "There is no small job," he said with a gentle smile. "Every task matters because every person matters." The room became quiet again. Many employees nodded in agreement. The young woman felt those words deeply. She remembered how quickly she had judged him simply because of his clothes. She had never stopped to ask who he was. She had never given him the chance to explain. Instead, she had made a decision based only on appearance. As the presentation ended, everyone applauded. The owner thanked the staff for their hard work and encouraged them to continue supporting one another. Soon the employees began leaving the meeting room in small groups. Conversations filled the hallways. "Did you know it was him?" one employee asked. "Not at all," another replied. "I thought he was just another visitor." Others quietly discussed the owner's habit of visiting offices without announcing himself. The young woman remained seated for a few moments after everyone else stood up. She felt too embarrassed to move. Her heart was heavy with regret. She replayed the scene again and again in her mind. His calm voice. His polite apology. His willingness to help pick up the papers. And her own reaction. The more she thought about it, the worse she felt. She finally stood and slowly walked into the hallway. Across the office, she noticed the owner speaking kindly with employees from different departments. He greeted receptionists, security staff, cleaners, and office assistants with the same respect he had shown everyone else. There was no difference in the way he treated people. He smiled, listened carefully, and thanked each person for their work. Watching this made the young woman realize something important. The greatest mistake she had made was not the misunderstanding itself. It was believing that someone's clothes could tell her who they were. She knew she could not pretend the incident had never happened. Whether he chose to forgive her or not, she had to accept responsibility for her actions. Taking a deep breath, she made a decision. Before the workday ended, she would find the owner, apologize sincerely, and admit that she had been completely wrong. She didn't know how he would respond. But she knew that saying nothing would be a far greater mistake. The rest of the afternoon felt much longer than usual. The young woman tried to finish her work, but her mind kept returning to the same moment in the hallway. Every time she looked at the papers on her desk, she remembered how they had fallen to the floor and how the company owner had bent down to help her without expecting anything in return. She could not understand why he had remained so calm after being treated so unfairly. Most people would have become angry. Some might have shouted or demanded an apology immediately. Instead, he had quietly apologized even though he had done nothing wrong. That thought stayed with her all day. As the office became quieter, many employees finished their work and started heading home. She noticed the owner's office door was still open. A few department managers were leaving after discussing business matters with him. She took a deep breath. Her hands felt cold. She knew this was the moment she had been avoiding. Slowly, she walked toward the office. When she reached the door, she gently knocked. The owner looked up from his desk and smiled kindly. "Please come in," he said. His warm voice surprised her even more. She stepped inside and quietly closed the door behind her. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. She lowered her eyes and gathered the courage to begin. "I came to apologize," she said softly. The owner waited patiently. She continued. "What happened this morning was completely my fault. I judged you without knowing anything about you. I let my stress control my actions, and I treated you with disrespect. I have been thinking about it all day, and I truly regret what I did." Her voice became quieter with every sentence. "I know saying sorry cannot erase what happened, but I wanted to take responsibility. You did nothing wrong, and I was unfair to you." The room remained silent for a moment. The owner leaned back in his chair and looked at her calmly. "I appreciate your honesty," he said. She slowly looked up. "I've visited many offices over the years," he continued. "Every visit teaches me something new. Sometimes I learn about our business. Other times I learn about people." She listened carefully. "This morning was unfortunate," he said. "But everyone makes mistakes. The important question is not whether someone makes a mistake. The important question is what they do afterward." She nodded. "I understand." He smiled gently. "You came here on your own. No one forced you to apologize. That tells me something about your character." She felt a small sense of relief, but she still carried guilt. "I still feel terrible," she admitted. "I know," he replied. "And that's a sign that you've already started learning from it." He stood up and walked toward the large office window. Outside, employees were leaving the building after another busy day. Without turning around, he spoke again. "When I started this company, I wore simple clothes almost every day because I couldn't afford anything else." He smiled as he remembered those days. "I delivered products myself. I cleaned the office. I answered customer calls. Many people ignored me because they thought I was unimportant." He paused for a moment. "I never forgot how that felt." The young woman quietly listened. He turned back toward her. "That's one reason I still visit offices dressed simply. I don't do it to test people. I do it because I want to stay connected to reality." She was surprised. "I've met amazing people who treated everyone with kindness, no matter what job they had. I've also met people who respected only those with expensive clothes or important titles. His words were calm, not angry. They often discovered too late that respect should never depend on appearance. She slowly nodded. I understand that now. The owner smiled. I believe you do. She hesitated before asking one more question. Are you going to dismiss me from my job? He looked at her for a moment before answering. If I believed people could never change, this company would never have grown. She looked surprised. We all have difficult days, he continued. Stress is real. Pressure is real. But we must never allow those things to decide how we treat others. She quietly agreed. I promise, she said. This will never happen again. I hope not, he replied with a gentle smile. He walked back to his desk and picked up a notebook. Tomorrow morning, he said, when you arrive at work, pay attention to every person you meet. She looked curious. The security guard at the entrance. The cleaner in the hallway. The receptionist. The maintenance worker. The person delivering packages. He paused before finishing. Try to greet each one with the same respect you would show the company owner. Those simple words touched her deeply. She realized respect should never be something that depended on a person's position. It should be given freely because every person deserves dignity. She thanked him sincerely before leaving the office. As she walked through the nearly empty hallway, she noticed the cleaning staff quietly finishing their work for the evening. For the first time, she stopped. She smiled warmly. Thank you for everything you do, she said. The cleaner looked surprised but smiled back. You're welcome. It was a small moment. But for her, it was the first step toward becoming a very different person than the one who had walked into the office that morning. The next morning felt different from the moment she walked into the office. The building was the same, the desks were in the same places, and the employees were just as busy as always. But something inside her had changed. As she entered through the front door, she noticed the security guard standing by the entrance. Before walking past him like she usually did, she stopped with a friendly smile. Good morning, she said. I hope you have a great day. The guard looked pleasantly surprised. Good morning, he replied with a smile. Thank you. I hope you do too. It was only a short conversation, but it made both of them smile. A few steps later, she reached the reception desk. Instead of rushing by, she thanked the receptionist for helping visitors every day, even during the busiest hours. The receptionist smiled warmly. That means a lot, she said. Sometimes people forget we're here. Those simple words stayed in her mind. As she walked through the hallway, she noticed a cleaner carefully wiping the glass doors. Without thinking twice, she held the door open so the cleaner could finish more easily. Thank you, the cleaner said. No, she replied with a smile. Thank you for keeping this place clean. The cleaner laughed softly, clearly touched by the unexpected kindness. Throughout the day, she made a real effort to treat everyone with patience and respect. Whether someone worked in the warehouse, the cafeteria, the mailroom, or the office, she greeted them with the same kindness. At first, some co-workers noticed the change and wondered what had happened. One quietly asked another, Have you noticed she's different lately? I have, the other replied. She seems much calmer now. Word slowly spread that her attitude had completely changed. People who had once seen her as impatient now noticed that she listened more carefully during conversations. She thanked others for their help and never spoke harshly, even when work became stressful. One afternoon, another delivery worker arrived carrying several boxes. A few weeks earlier, she might have ignored him or spoken impatiently. This time, she walked over with a friendly smile. Those boxes look heavy, she said. Can I help you find the right department? The delivery worker smiled with relief. That would be great. It's my first time delivering here. She guided him to the correct office and thanked him before returning to her desk. Several co-workers watched the interaction. One quietly smiled. It's nice seeing people treated with respect, someone whispered. Days turned into weeks. The office atmosphere slowly began to change. Employees started greeting one another more often. Departments worked together instead of blaming each other when problems appeared. Even during busy days, people remained calmer because kindness had started replacing frustration. The company owner noticed everything. Although he never mentioned the hallway incident again, he quietly observed the changes whenever he visited different departments. He saw her helping new employees understand their work. He noticed her encouraging co-workers instead of criticizing them. He watched her stay late one evening to help another team finish an important project, even though it was not part of her own responsibilities. None of these actions were done to impress anyone. She simply wanted to become a better person. One afternoon, a new employee accidentally spilled coffee near an important stack of documents. The young employee looked terrified. "I'm so sorry," the newcomer said. "It was an accident." Several people turned to look. Instead of becoming angry, she smiled gently. "It's all right," she said. "Let's clean it up before it spreads." Together, they quickly solved the problem. The new employee looked relieved. "Thank you for understanding," the employee said. "We all make mistakes," she replied. "The important thing is learning from them." As she spoke those words, she realized they were the same lesson the company owner had shared with her. Without realizing it, she had started passing that lesson on to others. A few days later, the company owner walked through the office again. He greeted employees one by one before stopping near her desk. "How are things going?" he asked. She smiled. "Much better than before." "I can see that," he replied. There was a short moment of silence. Then he looked around the office. "The atmosphere feels different," he said. She looked around too. Co-workers were helping one another. Someone from accounting was assisting the sales team. Two employees from different departments were laughing while solving a problem together. The receptionist welcomed visitors with a cheerful smile. The cleaner was chatting comfortably with several staff members. The office no longer felt divided by job titles. It felt like one team. The owner nodded with quiet satisfaction. "A workplace becomes stronger when people respect every role," he said. She smiled, knowing exactly what he meant. That evening, as she packed her bag to go home, she remembered the person she had been only a few weeks earlier. She hardly recognized that version of herself. One difficult moment had forced her to look honestly at her own behavior. Instead of allowing that mistake to define her, she had chosen to grow because of it. She knew there was still room to improve, but every day she was becoming more patient, more understanding, and more respectful. Without realizing it, her personal change had inspired many others around her. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered if the company owner had noticed just how much that single lesson had changed not only one employee, but the entire workplace. Several months passed, and the office had become a very different place. The busy schedules and tight deadlines were still there, but the way people treated one another had changed. Employees smiled more often, offered help without being asked, and showed appreciation for every person's work. The young woman had become one of the most trusted members of her team. Whenever a new employee joined the company, she was often the first person to welcome them. She patiently explained how things worked, introduced them to co-workers, and reminded them that every role in the company mattered. People noticed that she never ignored anyone. Whether someone was a cleaner, a security guard, a receptionist, or a department manager, she spoke with the same kindness and respect. Her co-workers admired the change. Many of them had no idea what had happened months earlier, but those who knew the story quietly respected the way she had accepted responsibility instead of making excuses. One morning, she received an email asking her to attend a meeting with the company owner later that afternoon. She read the message twice. Although several months had passed, she still felt a little nervous whenever she thought about the day they first met. She wondered why he wanted to see her. Had she made another mistake? Was there a new project? Or was it simply a routine meeting? When the time arrived, she walked to his office and gently knocked on the door. "Come in," the owner said with his familiar smile. She entered and thanked him for meeting with her. He invited her to sit down. For a moment, he looked through a folder on his desk before closing it. "I've been watching the progress of this office for quite some time," he began. She listened carefully. "I've also been watching your progress." She stayed quiet, unsure of what was coming next. He smiled. The person who stood in this office months ago is not the same person sitting here today. She felt both surprised and grateful. You accepted responsibility for your actions, he continued. More importantly, you changed your behavior every single day afterward. That is much harder than simply saying sorry. She thanked him quietly. The owner continued speaking. I've asked several department leaders about teamwork in this office. Your name keeps coming up. She looked surprised. They say you're patient. They say you're dependable. They say people feel comfortable asking you for help. She lowered her eyes for a moment. Hearing those words meant more to her than she could explain. I wasn't always like that, she admitted. I know, the owner replied with a gentle smile. And that's exactly why your growth matters. He stood up and walked toward the window. Skills can be taught. Experience comes with time. But the willingness to learn from mistakes is something much more valuable. He turned back toward her. I believe you're ready for more responsibility. Her heart began beating faster. The owner placed a document on the desk in front of her. I would like you to become the leader of our newest project team. She looked at the paper in surprise. She had hoped for opportunities in the future, but she had never expected this. You've earned the trust of your co-workers, the owner said. Leadership is not only about making decisions. It's about how you treat people every day. She smiled, feeling both excited and humbled. Thank you, she said sincerely. I won't take this opportunity for granted. I know you won't, he replied. After the meeting ended, she walked back through the office with the promotion letter in her hands. Before reaching her desk, she stopped near the front entrance. The security guard greeted her with a smile. Good afternoon. She smiled back. Good afternoon. I hope your day is going well. As she continued walking, she thanked the cleaner who was arranging supplies in the hallway. She greeted the receptionist, who smiled warmly. She even stopped to help a delivery worker carry a few boxes to the correct department. None of these actions felt forced anymore. They had become part of who she was. Later that afternoon, her promotion was announced to the office. Her co-workers applauded warmly. Several people congratulated her, not because of her new title alone, but because they believed she truly deserved it. The owner watched from the back of the room with a quiet smile. He knew that months earlier, one painful mistake could have become the end of someone's career. Instead, it had become the beginning of personal growth. As the workday came to an end, the young woman stood near the office window and looked outside. She thought about everything that had happened. One moment of poor judgment had taught her a lesson she would never forget. She realized that clothes do not reveal a person's character. Job titles do not measure a person's worth. Every individual deserves kindness, patience, and respect. From that day forward, she promised herself that she would never judge anyone by their appearance or their position. Instead, she would choose to see the person first. That simple choice changed not only her own life but also the lives of many people around her. And long after the story was over, everyone in the office remembered one powerful lesson. The greatest sign of success is not the title on a business card, but the respect you show to every person you meet.